No, I'm not putting a blooper reel. Hi everybody, and welcome back to NoPro Worship. My name is David Wesley. This is a weekly teaching series meant for worship leaders, singers, and musicians from smaller churches to help them grow in their service to the church. Last week, I talked a little bit about my values and what I hope to accomplish through this series. Today, I'll be getting a little bit more personal and talking about my own development as a musician. Hopefully, this will help you to get to know me a little bit better and where I'm coming from. So, without further ado, like many people, my parents put me in piano lessons at a young age. And for me, it was because I started playing some simple songs on my own by ear. You know, I loved my teacher. She was my next door neighbor, the mother of my best friend, but I was a terrible student. I didn't like the songs, I didn't like the teaching method, I didn't like practicing, and I was completely unmotivated. My older sister, who started piano actually a couple of years after I did, she swiftly passed over me, and not because of some extra helping of talent, but because she was motivated and disciplined. She was a firstborn. I considered it a mercy when my parents finally let me quit piano lessons when my teacher conveniently moved away. In junior high, I learned to play the violin. This was in the classroom setting, and I continued to build on my earlier foundation in music theory from piano lessons. I even had a very early music notation program for my Tandy 1000 computer that let me experiment with the musical arrangements. We soon moved to a different town, and my new high school didn't have a strings program. So after toying around with the drums for a little bit, I picked up the baritone or euphonium and I ran with it. I was in the school concert band, and I joined the marching band with the local Sea Cadets. I eventually made my way out to the Pacific Coast to teach music at summer camp. And it was also during this time that I started tinkering with video editing, during the dawn of the internet age. When I graduated from high school and moved a few hundred miles away for university, I found a church that was much bigger than the small town church that I attended with my parents. And it was growing rapidly. The worship style was contemporary, and it was done very well. It was all done very well. I joined the sound team, and I had a few amazing mentors, including my friend Dave. And we kind of joked that Dave stood for dedicated audio video expert. I soon bought my own baritone horn, and I got to play on Dave's worship team. During this time, the worship ministry provided me the motivation I needed to really learn the piano. I started reteaching myself by sneaking into the music faculty at my university and taking every opportunity I could to sit behind the piano. Eventually, I got to the point where Dave, my worship leader, felt I was good enough to at least be his backup keyboard player under the right circumstances. But in order to do this, I needed to pass an audition and meet a certain standard that was set for the entire worship ministry and not just for Dave's team. I figured I might as well audition for voice too. I thought my voice was pretty decent. So I did both piano and voice auditions and failed miserably. I was told to take lessons and try again some other time in the future. I was devastated. I was sad. I was angry. After all, I wanted to serve God. Shouldn't I be able to? Unfortunately, there was no opportunity within this church to grow in musicianship to the point where I was ready to meet their standard. I didn't really like it that my only option was to go toil away in private with the hopes of someday being good enough to play in a band with others. Around this time, through an informal mountain biking group I belonged to, I happened to meet the worship pastor of another church that was on the other side of town. He took me under his wing and he showed me a different path. This other church had a choir and it had a small orchestra, which was combined with a contemporary worship band about once a month. Singers on the worship team actually had to be members of the choir. It was seen as an entry-level opportunity where anyone could come and sing and grow in a community while serving God. So with some reluctance, I ended up changing churches, and I joined the choir. I was able to play with the orchestra on occasion as well. I was given the chance eventually to play backup keyboard on the worship team. Finally, when I was ready, I moved up to playing lead piano with the band. And one day, the worship leader asked if I wanted to lead a worship service. And my first kick at the can wasn't just an ordinary service. It was one of those rare occasions where the worship band was joined by both the choir and the orchestra. There were more people on that stage than there are in the pews of many churches. I can't even express what it was like to lead that service, especially when I look back at the path that brought me to that day. And that day was nearly 14 years ago. And though I've had many ups and downs since then, more than I can count, I can see that God's enduring faithfulness, when it's combined with a willingness to learn and grow, it can open doors to places that we can't even imagine. For example, my YouTube channel exists because of another low point in my life. This was a period when my passion and creativity and worship hit multiple brick walls of resistance. I retreated to my basement and started to praise in front of the camera. And 5 years and 9 million views later, it's still going, and God is still at work. So thanks for taking the time to listen to my story. Like most people, I actually hate talking about myself, but I thought it would be useful to provide a bit of context for the advice that I'm going to give in future videos. To keep up with NoPro worship, remember to check back every Friday for new videos, and you can hit that big red subscribe button below for NoPro worship and for other content that I'll be putting out. This video was made possible by my patrons on Patreon, especially my super patron, MARSHA HANSEN. If you're interested in supporting this ministry, please visit patreon.com/DavidWesley. And remember, God's people deserve leaders that grow. I'll see you next week.